Time is 5:01 in the Warwick City Council. Finance Committee is now open in session. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling some stuff up.
That's okay.
May I have an acceptance for the minutes of the committee meeting held on September 16th? I move favorable action. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. On to PCR 92-24, resolution relative to bids. May I have a motion for acceptance of the minutes for the committee meeting held September 16th?
So moved.
All in favor?
Yes.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
That's okay. You're right.
Oh, thank you. The first item on the bid is bid 2025-217, DPW repair and replace frame on engine 3. This is found on page 1. Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Eric Earls, Public Works. So engine 3, it's a 2007 Pierce pumper. It has a rotted frame. There have been a lot of internal conversations about the cost-benefit analysis with regard to what to do, new versus repair. Ultimately, it was decided to repair the vehicle. We tried to look for local entities that could do it, but none were available. So that's why we are looking to award to Pierce Manufacturing the amount of $377,480 to repair engine 3.
Thank you. If I may just take a little bit of time to explain or to go over my conversation. I called Chief Peter McMichael over the course of the week, and my concern to this body was that it seems to me that the Pierce pumper was purchased, the frame rotted, and we're going right back to Pierce to replace the frame. And the chief agreed that it seemed a little odd. However, when you look at, he assured and he said that the body of the truck is in mint condition, the mechanics are in mint condition, everything, the truck is worthy, and now the cost to buy a new vehicle to replace this current vehicle where the frame is completely rusted would be more than double the cost of replacing the frame. So even though it's a 2007, they would replace the frame and they would replace it with a galvanized steel. Am I saying that correctly? Was I?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I would.
And I'm sorry. Yeah, he did say that. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure I said the right one. So after some discussion, it really calmed me down because I had a big issue with, as someone who dealt with a vehicle that had a rotted frame and then had to repair it from the same company that built it on a rotted or sold it, that ended up becoming a rotted frame. He calmed me down by saying this truck is in excellent condition with the exception of the frame. And when you look at, as you said, Director, at the very beginning, the cost analysis, that if we were to go out to bid, one, there's a long delay. We have about a 2-year delay on bringing in the new apparatuses, where this could be a good fix on a good truck with the exception of a frame. Does that sound all about the same as what the conversation was with the department that you had?
Yeah, that's accurate, 100%.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank the Chief McMichael, the department, and DPW, because we did have an extensive conversation, And this does seem to be the smart way to go, where you have a good body, a good pumper, a good engine, everything's solid, but it needs a new frame. So any questions from members of this committee?
No, oh, I appreciate you giving that information because I was concerned.
Right. Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, Director.
Good evening.
Eric, how many miles on this 2007?
I do not have that handy. I apologize. Christy sent me a text right before the meeting saying she wasn't going to be able to attend because she was sick. So I might have to tag out to have
Okay,
fire
sure.
department help me out. Thank you.
Good evening, Chief Peter McMichael. The mileage on the vehicle is 123,000 miles. It just had some extensive engine work done to it. So this expenditure is something that none of us are happy about. We're not pleased at all to see us have to invest this kind of money into a truck that should not have had this problem. This is why when we come before you now, with new apparatus that is galvanized frame rails so that we never have to worry about the frame rotting out. After careful consideration and discussion with the superintendent of repairs in DPW, we wanted his weigh in as to whether or not it was worth putting this kind of an investment into this truck, and he deemed it an appropriate expenditure as well. The alternative is to take the truck off the road permanently, and we're now looking at apparatus replacement costs for a new vehicle north of over $800,000 for a new pumper today. So because of those factors, that's why we determined that this was a proper use of our funds to put this truck back on the road because of the condition of the vehicle and getting the weigh-in from the automotive experts in it, that it was a sound move.
Thank you, Chief. Councilman, thank you so much. You have the time. But I do appreciate the chief, and I should have called him out to begin with. Thank you.
So, Chief, you may want to just stay there. So over the years, and particularly recently, we have approved the purchase of a good amount of vehicles for the fire department. And oftentimes, someone from the department would come before us and tell us that the trucks need to be replaced because they're 15, 20 years old. They have 150, 160,000 miles on them, and they're about used up their useful life. And now you come before us asking for close to $400,000, or about half of what a new truck would cost for just a frame. And that is very concerning to me. And I understand about this frame you're talking about will last forever, but the rest of the truck will not last forever. The engine still has 123,000 miles on it. Everything else on that truck, we've replaced $40,000 on the front of a truck that hit a poliot recently, or a colliot recently. That's just to fix that. So I have a lot of concerns with spending $377,000 on a frame that will outlast a truck. And by your history, you're looking, typically you come before us for new vehicles in that 150, 160,000 mile range. So what we're talking about here is to give you I want to use a round number, $380,000 worth of frame to last us maybe another 25 to 30,000 miles, maybe a couple of years, maybe the engine won't blow, et cetera, et cetera. It's also concerning that this truck has got to be transported all the way to Wisconsin to do this. And there is so many what ifs in this bid that really raises red flags to me. What ifs? So the what ifs are a warranty, right? There's no particular warranty. as far as the whole vehicle goes. There's also other contingencies or could be consequential repairs, such as emergency parking brake tests, the incoming battery load test, electrical inspections, chassis, road tests, pumps, etc. All of these things are not known right now, and they also could be issues that need to be repaired. And once this truck is in Wisconsin, we are at their beck and call. They own us for whatever has to be done and for whatever price they want to charge. And I am particularly not comfortable with that. We also have, or I also have, some questions on some of the language, because I think oftentimes, if not all the time, words matter. And on the air system, as an example, it says replace the air tanks and mounting brackets. Replace, replace, replace. Further down on replace fuel tank, it says replace the fuel tank with a new tank. Replace the fuel tank monitoring straps with new straps. Replace the fuel fill holes with new hose, new clamps. Replace the fuel tank sending unit. On the air system, it doesn't say replace with new, it just says replace. So are we to assume that that could mean remove and replace? Or does it mean replace with new? It doesn't say. It also says have front end alignment checked and rear axle tracking set. So that's not included either. That's an additional cost. And lastly, it's concerning to me that, once again, no one has verified the math on the numbers, because 20% of $314,480 does not come up to $377,480. It comes up to $377,376. One might say it's only $100 or $104. I don't look at it as only $104. I look at it as this is just one more example of the lack of detail in these pricings and the math on these items that come before us. And it's apparent that there isn't a lot of double checking taking place. So I respectfully disagree with you on this. I don't think that this is a good deal for the taxpayers. Thinking more that it's, well, we've only got a few months left to get rid of the rest of the COVID money or use up the rest of the COVID money so we don't have to send it back. I think this, as well as some other things that are in here with COVID money, I think that's what's happening with some of this. Perhaps that the rest of this COVID money could be used for other things, such as infrastructure in our parks, etc. So I cannot support this for those reasons. And Chairman, I would ask for a PCR on this item, please.
Madam Clerk, may I have a PCR? Repeat, please.
PCR 9524.
Thank you. For
Thank
the
you.
record, bid 2025-217, repair and replace frame on engine 3 is now PCR 95-24.
Mr. Chairman, at the very least, the monetary amount needs to be amended to the correct amount.
Okay, hold on. I would like to get through the comments or questions from members of the council. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So I understand from the director's comment earlier that there was certainly a hope that the bid would come back a little bit lower. perhaps from a more local company that didn't involve transportation. I think this location is probably about or over 1,000 miles away, more or less. I'm trying to get a sense of at what point would we say that it simply doesn't make sense to take this this route of getting it repaired. Obviously, it was certainly worth looking into getting it repaired, but then at what point, and I don't mean to say anything here or ask anything that could be less than ideal for bidding processes, but of course, every one of these vehicles is unique. There is a unique assessment to every single one of these. So I'm certainly not trying to put anything out there in public that would encourage vendors in the future to go a little higher. But if you could say, where is that tipping point where one would say, okay, at that point, at that kind of a price point, it would be too much to go through this repair. It would make sense just to go that other route of selling this vehicle as is and trying to replace it with something else, whether new or used.
So if we were to replace this vehicle today, as I had stated, it would be over $800,000 is the last time we went out to bid for a pumper truck is what those prices are coming back to us now. I can tell you that the availability of ARPA funds did not affect our decision in this process. We looked at it as whether or not we repair the vehicle or not. And so I'm not a mechanic, which is why we rely on DPW and the experts there in the repair division to weigh in on this. And because of the condition of the truck, the condition of the engine, we foresee getting 10 plus years out of this truck going forward. So this is a truck that we're not going to only have it for 3 or 4 more years. We're looking at between 10 and 15 years of frontline service for this vehicle that this truck would be good for. So based on that information was why we determined that our best course of action would be to repair the vehicle and put it back in service rather than retire it and replace it with the cost of a new vehicle.
So I'm double checking here, but I believe that the vehicle, yes, it's a 2007.
It's actually, that's a misprint. It's actually 2011.
Oh, 2011. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That can, of course, certainly make a difference. I'm just, part of this calculation is I'm thinking to myself too, that I drive a 2007 Hyundai Elantra. I don't necessarily see myself getting 10 more years out of that vehicle. Look online, look at the prices of that vehicle. Well, I'll put it this way. For me to get a brand new model, it's going to be, it'd be pretty expensive. Probably, and I haven't looked this up, but I'd venture brand new car looking at over 20 grand. Suffice to say, I would not put 50% of the value of a brand new car into my 2007, because then I'd be putting 10 grand into a vehicle that objectively is most definitely worth less than 5 grand. So I don't think that's a roundabout way of saying that. I know that Warwick has gone out and purchased used fire apparatus before. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily the best route to go, because that can be very much hit or miss. But buying a new vehicle isn't necessarily the best benchmark to use either when it comes to a decision as to whether or not to replace the rotted frame on this vehicle. I will say that I'm a little bit torn because the numbers, I'm not a mechanic. I don't have personal familiarity with this vehicle whatsoever. So I would be inclined to defer to the administration on something like this. The administration being the experts, knowing this vehicle, doing these assessments, and yet at the same time, these numbers, they're not entirely adding up to me. I think that Councilman Lattiser, while I'm not going to go there on the ARPA funds, because I would certainly agree there are plenty of other areas where the administration is going to have no trouble at all spending those ARPA funds. I think that Councilman Lattiser does raise some very good points when it comes to all of the unknowns in this particular vehicle in the process. And the only thing that we really know is that the initial repair amount on this is being estimated at, well, not estimated, but purchase order, initial repair amount, $314,480, and we're factoring in a contingency of 20% on top of that, which is a pretty good contingency, I would say, but we just have so many unknowns when it comes to this vehicle. I suppose that all of this is more thinking out loud than it is asking more specific questions, but I think that maybe from this stream of thoughts, if you'd be able to answer as to some of these concerns. Thank you.
The hesitation that you have on this is certainly understandable, Councilman. We also share that same hesitation in this matter. This is not something that we bring to you lightly. This is something that we went back and forth for a while on about what to do. None of us are happy about this. This should not happen with a vehicle of this age. We have seen throughout the region vehicles by this manufacturer of this age have experienced similar frame issues. We've followed some of the lawsuits that have taken place in regards to it, and they have not been successful, which is why we don't think it's smart to go down that avenue as well, because it's already been done by other communities. There's nothing good about this, other than the fact that if we do put this money into the vehicle, we do expect to get, as I had said, between 10 to 15 years of life out of the truck. We're not happy about having to allocate this amount of money into a truck that is a 2011. We should not have to do this. But yet here we find ourselves with this vehicle that Public Works has already determined that it's not safe for the road because of the frame. And so we are left to come up with a decision. Do we put money into it, or do we put it out to pasture? And so I think it would be equally upsetting if we put it out to pasture because of the frame rot, which leaves us with the only other alternative, which is to send it to the manufacturer for replacement.
Thank you. And a couple of quick follow-ups here. Is this 2011 a vehicle that the city had bought new? And also, has there been any research into what would it look like? What would we expect to be able to sell it for in as-is condition?
The vehicle was purchased new. I don't have an answer to the question of what it'd be worth right now if we sold it. I honestly don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And for the record, there will be an amendment done within this. The chief did clarify, and I forgot to mention that in my notes. It says in the statement that it's a 2007. It's actually a 2011.
That's correct.
Correct?
Yes,
Thank you. This is where our discussion engine 3, which is a 2011 Pierce pumper. Are there any further questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattiser.
So, Chief, how did this paperwork come to us saying it's a 2007?
As you know, Councilman, the repairs of the vehicles are handled through DPW. So I'm not sure exactly how it came to be that it was labeled as a 2007, but the vehicle is a 2011 vehicle.
So currently this vehicle is 13 years old. What's the oldest pumper that you have now?
The oldest pumper we have right now is, well, we just took engine 1 out of service. It's 07? 07, yeah, 2007.
So it's an 07.
Yes.
And that's the oldest vehicle you have. So it's 17 years old. And am I correct remembering that it seems as though the history is that every 15 years or so, your fire department has been replacing vehicles?
Ideally,
Okay.
it's been more towards the 20-year mark.
Okay. So why do you expect this vehicle, just because it has a new chassis, doesn't have a transmission, a drivetrain, an engine, it doesn't have all the other gears and operations that this vehicle is requiring, it doesn't have axles, it doesn't have bearings, it doesn't have any of the other stuff. We're talking about a chassis. Why do you think that you're going to get another 10 to 15 years, somewhere between 24 and 28 years out of a vehicle when you have never gotten such performance out of any vehicle? Just because you're getting a new chassis doesn't inject another 10 years of life into a vehicle. This whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me. Sorry. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. So are there any questions, comments from members of the public? Questions, comments from members of the public? Okay, so I will address, as I said, bid 2025-217 is now PCR 95-24. There was a request by Councilman Lattiser to go ahead and amend the amount of the 20%. So to explain for clarity, the original amount being asked is $314,481. If you multiply that by to increase it by 20%, so multiply by 1.2, it comes to $377,376. The ask on the document paper on the proposal is $377,000, $480,000. That is a $104 difference. The other item that would need to be looked at is that it states in the paper that it is a 2007 Pierce pumper. However, it is a 2011 pumper, as stated by the chief. I will first seek so before we put forward for an amendment on the PCR 95-24, my input is we are authorizing to spend. Doesn't mean that these are the exact amounts to spend. So though Councilman Lattiser is correct that if we were to go to an exact dollar amount of $377,376 and the document paper says $377,480, that is a $104 difference. That is above this 20%. However, this is an authorization to spend. This is just giving them to a cap of spending. So if someone, I'm going to choose not to put forward a motion for that amendment just because it's really just not necessary. However, if there is someone in the committee who would want to put forward that motion, I'll hear it and it'll be second.
So moved.
Is there a second? That is failed. So now to go on to the 2007 to 2011. Within this, I'm going to ask for a motion to amend to change the wording in the proposition paper for clarity from a 2007 change. We don't have to do that.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
The supportive materials can be corrected by the department and updated accordingly. It's not actually part of the bid resolution that we have before us, so no amendment needed there, and the departments can update that
Okay,
paperwork.
sounds good. Thank you so much, Solicitor. So with that said, and going through everything and no amendment needed, do I have a motion on PCR 95-24?
Move favorable action.
Do I have a second? Seconded? All in favor?
Aye.
No. Thank you. Next is bid 2025-218, purchase various police vehicles. Good evening, Major.
Good evening, Major Andy Sullivan for the Police Department. The Police Department is requesting spending authority under City Ordinance 56-6 as exception to bid for the amount of $115,447.20 to purchase various police vehicles. The 3 vehicles would be purchased from Colonial Municipal Group under the Plymouth County Commissioners Cooperative Bid. If approved, funding would be derived from pre-approved opera capital outlay funds, budget code 510-05030.
Thank you, Major. I see that these vehicles would be assigned to the task force detective personnel, and that's why there's all different brands of vehicles, maybe not traditional Ford pursuit vehicles.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Are there any questions from members of the council? Councilman Lattisaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Major.
Good evening.
Major, why do we need a Grand Cherokee Laredo versus a Chevrolet Blazer or a Chevrolet Malibu? When I'm looking at this, I'm taking away the same feeling as I had with the previous bid on this fire truck regarding the APRA funds. So tell me why we need a Grand Cherokee versus a Chevrolet Malibu, which is an $18,000 difference.
A big part of it is availability. These vehicles are currently in stock on the lot at Colonial Municipal Group. And we try to have a variety of vehicles. The vehicles are semi-covert, so we don't want to have all one type of recognizable vehicle.
So I still look at taxpayer dollars, and I understand about comfort. I've always supported the SUVs versus, the smaller Ford Tauruses or whatever you were using years ago. But I have a real hard time with this item here because of the significant difference in the price and the fact of the time that's actually spent in these vehicles. And I'm sure, or at least I think it's fair to say that the police department isn't desperate for vehicles. We've approved a significant amount of vehicles for the police department in a short period of time. And I'm sure that there are plenty of Malibus and Blazers on different lots. Doesn't have to necessarily be a Chevrolet either. So with that said, in these vehicles, do these vehicles, not just these 3 vehicles, do other vehicles, do they go home with any of the police officers?
These particular ones do not, no.
Any others?
Some vehicles, depending on person's assignment.
Okay. And I don't know, maybe the chief of staff would have to answer this question, but these vehicles that are taken home by employees of the city.
Councilman, if I may remind you that he just answered the question, these particular vehicles are not part of the vehicles that'll be taken home. So if we could stick to the bid, thank you.
So as I was saying, these vehicles that the police department are allowed to take home.
Councilman, once again, he already made clear that these vehicles are not included in that. So we are speaking about the purchase of these 3 vehicles, and the major has already clarified these vehicles will not be taken home. So if you could continue with any questions that have to do with this bid of these 3 vehicles. Thank you.
So let me rephrase the question. If these 3 vehicles were allowed to be taken home,
Excuse me, Councilman Major, will these 3 vehicles be taken home?
Not to my knowledge, not these 3 assigned vehicles, no.
Thank you.
is
Councilman, if there are any
is it
questions
difficult to
pertaining to this
understand
bid.
my request of the question, if these vehicles were taken home?
This question could be emailed and you could get an easy answer and you could read the statement in the council chambers, but we are speaking about 3 vehicles that the major has already clarified these will not be taken home. These will be special task vehicles.
Question to the solicitor. Can the question that I asked regarding if these 3 vehicles are taken home, is that question appropriate?
The chairman is opining that the question is outside the scope of germaneness because the hypothetical you're posing has been asked and answered as it relates to the reality of that. So the chair is making an opinion that that question is unnecessary and outside the germaneness.
Okay. So I'll get the answers to that question, I guess, at another time. You indicated that the purchase of these 3 vehicles would complete your 2025 fiscal purchase plan. That is as presented in the capital budget?
Yes.
And the numbers that you have been approved in the capital budget have not been exceeded by this purchase right here?
No, I believe there's about a $5,000 balance remaining.
Okay. Chairman, I'm going to ask for PCR on this.
Madam Clerk, may I have a PCR on bid 2025-218?
It's PCR 9624.
Thank you so much. For the record, bid 2025-218, purchase of various police vehicles is now PCR 9624. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any further questions from members of this council? Are there any further questions from members of the public? Thank you. May I have a motion on PCR 96-24?
Move favorable action.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 3 is bid 2025-207, DPW Sanitation Fleet Software. This is found on page 13. Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Eric Earls, Public Works. So Public Works is looking to award a 3-year term to Rubicon Technologies for GPS software for the sanitation vehicles. You'll probably remember I was up here over a year ago talking about GPS for the sanitation vehicles. We were going to use Verizon was the entity, and everybody was on board with it. Good idea, track the sanitation trucks. There were lots of bugs in that program or in that, everything. First of all, when we got the software, or the GPS systems had to be hardwired into the trucks. And a lot of times that threw up codes for the trucks and created issues with regard to that. But more importantly, even when they were running, they weren't giving us the information we were hoping for. It was a very static image of where the trucks were. You could see that a truck had gone down a street, but it wasn't really great at providing more information than that. You know, if a truck was driving down Sandy Lane and they were full halfway down Sandy Lane, and that's when they decided that they were going to continue to Johnston to dump, it would have looked like they picked up everything on Sandy Lane, right? Because that's what their track was, that's what the GPS was saying. This program is actually geared specifically towards sanitation, the sanitation fleet. When you walk in the morning, all of the locations will have orange dots. When they are collected, they will have green dots. So it's really going to be a good way for us to maximize our efficiency. Not only that, and probably most importantly, you'll see that the pay structure is such that the first year is a little bit more. In the first year, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to take all of our routes and input them into their software program to maximize the efficiency. So they will provide our drivers with the best, most efficient way to conduct their routes. Not only that, but if they have to share, for example, we have 12 trucks out on the road today. That means that 2 routes are open, one recycling, one sanitation. So that route has to be shared. With this program, the drivers will know exactly how to share that route. They'll be dropped into locations where there won't be overlap. And like I said, it'll just provide a significant amount of efficiency. In addition to that, one of the other things we talked about with regard to the sanitation fleet was maintenance. And we have been doing our preventive maintenance. But the way it's handled is that the guys will perform their walk around and have a piece of paper, hand that off. At the end of the day, perform the walk around, have a piece of paper, hand that off, and that gets circulated to the sanitation, automotive, and then they get checked like that. This software will allow them to input that electronically. So in the morning, they will do their checks, input that electronically. It will go to the people that need to see it. In the afternoon, they'll do the same thing. Any kind of deviations or red flags that show up, bald tires, leaky hydraulics, anything like that will be identified in real time, and then we'll be able to address those things with much more efficiency. So anyway, that's where we are with this program.
Director, question for you. When the sanitation picks up a location, 2-part question. When the sanitation picks up at a location, what tells that computer that it is picked up and that the driver did not, leave that street for whatever reason? So as the driver passes those locations, they automatically turn green, or does the driver have to manually input?
It acknowledges the stop, right? So if you're at a location and it stops for 8 seconds, that will make the assumption, sure, you could stop everywhere and not pick up any trash, but the assumption will be that if it stops there for 8 seconds or so, that it has collected whatever was there.
So that's a perfect follow-up to the second question. I have gotten phone calls, and I do realize you've trained new drivers. You've also smartened the routes. But I've gotten phone calls repeatedly, including on my own street, my neighbors who kind of look at me cross-eyed, you're the councilman, how come our garbage doesn't get picked up? I know that other council members have gotten phone calls from constituents. Is the route pre-planned? So if you do have a new driver, is there a map that person can see on that screen or anything like that in case they did miss a street that can send them back, that it'll alert them like, hey, this street wasn't picked up?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And not only that, it has the capability of allowing residents to see when their trash has been collected. It also has the ability for our drivers to take pictures of locations. For example, if they're driving and they're picking up recycling and they see that, I don't know, there's fluorescent light bulbs sticking out of the unit and they don't pick it up, they can take a picture of it. That picture can get registered to that location. So when we get that call, we can say, oh, this is why we didn't pick up your recycling that day. And similarly, it'll also we'll also be able to indicate, if someone calls and says, oh, they missed me today. The driver could theoretically look and say, I went by that house and the trash wasn't out yet, which, it happens. It happens. And in those instances, we'll just go out and grab it. That's not a big deal. We understand. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, that did answer the question. Thank you. And now, how would the capability be available, even though it's capable of doing that? Will the residents have the availability to go on our city website and do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't want to make any promises because I don't know how quickly we can turn that around, but that is one of the selling points that they have. Yes.
Okay. All right. I understand. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, of course, Councilman Gephardt.
I'm just going to say that this is fantastic. It was good to see when we first went down this path, and now a purpose-built application for this specific function that we're performing is wonderful. The more we can drive this into all of our operations, I think the better off we'll be. I feel like this one's going to pay for itself. I don't know if the sales reps push some kind of ROI, but I'm sure there's one there, even just in terms of operating more efficiently. So thank you for pursuing this. Any pushback from drivers or any pushback from employees on adopting something like this? Or are you getting pretty good reviews?
No, I think the initial indications are that they're on board with it, largely because they do a good job. And sometimes, they are accused, may not be the right word, but this will add accountability for all parties.
Yep.
And I think that is good.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Councilman Ricks.
So how exactly would it work with the website application or the like? Is this something where I imagine that there wouldn't have to be like a resident login or anything? It's a matter of all the data would just be out there in public?
No, the resident would have to log in. They would have to specifically request that they receive notifications when the trash is collected.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that actually solves some of my concerns there. I mean, if USPS can do that for our incoming mail, I suppose that we can do this at that level too. Let's see. I did have one or two more questions. Just taking a quick look over this. Okay, so one question being, what's the difference in price for this service as opposed to the one we were previously using?
This one's a little bit more expensive, but with the amount of additional pieces that are offered in this, like the councilman said, we anticipate that this will pay for itself in a year, just on efficiencies, gas, vehicle maintenance. Like I said, the level of accountability for our drivers, making sure their routes are taken care of, making sure that they're doing their maintenance checklists. Those types of things are incredibly valuable. So I definitely think it's worth the little bit extra that we're paying for it.
The calculation makes sense to me too, for the reasons that Councilman Gebhardt stated. Let's see. So with the tracking as well, I imagine that some households are more prone than others to put things in the recycling carts that shouldn't be there. I remember a little while ago, one of my constituents was posting on Facebook, ranting about how diapers had fallen into the street. And it turns out that he had been putting used diapers in his recycling cart and was being indignant about Warwick not picking up used diapers as part of recycling, which boggles my mind that anyone would think that human feces could be recyclable. But anyways, I imagine that there are some households out there that have recycling issues, and that's a financial concern for our whole city, because it's my understanding that if there's enough stuff in a drop at the recycling facility that is simply not recyclable, they're going to reject that load. So is this software, is it the sort of thing where we can, really the city can use it to spot and to track some of those more problematic areas, and then use that to try to minimize those loads that are being returned?
I'm not sure if, certainly we'll be able to identify problem constituents, but we've been doing that with boots on the ground. You know, we've had an inspector walking through the neighborhood and checking them. We know the areas that are more prone to rejected loads, and what they'll do is they'll hang an orange tag on it, push it back off the street, indicate why it was rejected, and then typically that's followed up with a phone call and an explanation. But this specific software obviously won't be able to do a lot of that. But yeah, we'll be able to see, you know, if there are problem spots. But yeah, diapers and recycling, that's pretty disgusting.
You can't make up some of this stuff. I'm glad that the department is staying on top of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further questions? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say that, you know, on occasion, you know, my ward's no different than any others. On occasion, you know, there may be a missed trash pickup or recycle pickup. It happens infrequently, but I want to take this opportunity to give kudos to the sanitation director, because he is very responsive at taking care of something that, you know, may have been missed, or a broken cot or something like that. So, as you know, I have no problem tackling a fight, but I also believe in giving kudos where they're due. So, yes, I think this is a good thing, Eric. I agree with it. I'm happy to see you moving forward with it. I do have some questions. One is, have you actually observed this system in action? Have you been to a community that's using this exact software right now?
I have not. No, I have not seen it in action.
So why are you convinced then that it's going to be as effective as you hope it's going to be?
Well, there are testimonials from major cities that they do operate in. Glendale, Houston, Kansas City, Memphis, Atlanta, Denver, and Miami all implement this system on obviously a much larger scale than we do. And they have all spoken very highly of it and speak to the efficiencies, the cost savings. And so that's kind of what I'm basing my opinion on.
Okay. Are there any other communities in Rhode Island that are using this?
No.
That's interesting. Are there any other communities in New England that are using this?
I don't know, but it's different for a lot of municipalities, because a lot of municipalities don't pick up their own trash, right?
Right.
Municipalities wouldn't be able to make this decision if they had a waste management or a mega who was picking up their trash. That would have to be those entities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a big difference.
Sure.
We control that, and so we're allowed to, you know, obviously implement something like this without, you know, having to jump through hoops.
Sure. So assuming that it's going to do everything that you expect, we could actually be a trendsetter here in the state, right?
That's it.
Yeah. Eric, this system, it says the GPS system leaves a breadcrumb trail. I'm very familiar with that, with GPS systems and navigational, et cetera, et cetera. Is this GPS, is it activated the moment a driver gets in the vehicle and leaves the barn for his or her daily routine?
Yeah, yeah. It actually, unlike the previous entity we tried to use, this is actually all controlled by a cell phone, right? As part of this, the next step would be to get city-issued cell phones for all the drivers so that I could take them, mount them in the vehicle, and then that's how this program is run. So yeah, it would start right when they turn it on and mount it in the vehicle.
Which brings me to one of my other questions, is the cell phones. So the cell phones, the cost of the cell phones and the usage and monthly fees of the cell phones are not included with this particular program. Okay. Now, so the cell phone will be with the truck or with the driver?
I guess that would depend, right? It would depend, but for the most part, the cell phone would be with the truck. Unless there was an issue with the truck, he had to bring it in and then he had to jump into a different truck. So then it would stay with the driver. But for the most part, when a driver is assigned a route in the morning, they would go take the phone and go out to that route, right?
Yep.
And then if something changed, it would have to be an anomaly for it to not be with the driver, I think, right?
So does this cell phone, similar to the question I asked about the trucks, does this cell phone go home with the drivers?
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, so the cell phone will remain at a DPW headquarters after the end of the shift, and when the driver comes in the following day, whoever is assigned to that truck will get that cell phone, which is assigned to a specific truck?
That's the way we anticipate it, yeah.
Okay. Does the driver have the ability to turn this GPS off at any particular time?
I would imagine if you shut the phone off, it would stop working, but obviously that would be a red flag as to what they were doing, and that would be reason to question them when they came back into the yard.
So that is something that's monitored by the yard?
Well, yeah. I mean, if all of a sudden you see the vehicle going, doing its route, and then
Right.
it goes out, we still have regular communication.
Right, sure.
Call him on his regular cell
Sure.
phone or, on the radio and find out, hey, what's going on?
Is this information stored any place? Do you keep it for a week, a day, 30 days, 60 days?
I don't know that answer. It is all cloud-based, but I don't know how long they maintain that data.
If it's something that can communicate back and forth or has the ability, as you said, to communicate back and forth with a property owner, I would assume that there's some time frame that this remains available, right?
I assume so as well, yes.
So this GPS will have the ability to track that vehicle wherever it is, whether it's on its route or whether it's stopped somewhere for lunch or whatever, the vehicle will be monitored pretty much the entire shift.
Correct.
Okay, I'd be interested in knowing about the storage and the time frame that this information is kept. I think there's certainly a benefit to having that. This also says that the proposal, bring your own devices, requires one-time implementation and training services. What does the training services consist of? And will each driver be receiving that training, or will it just be yourself as an example?
No, all the drivers would learn it. And the implementation is, like I said, that's them collecting all the data about our routes in the city and one-ways and all that. And that's part of it. And then the training would be, mostly the training for the sanitation division, because they're the ones that monitor the day-to-day. But also the drivers, obviously, so they understand what what they're looking at as well.
Okay. All right. I think, and I don't know what the answer will be or if it's something that is feasible, but you brought up some good points about fluorescent light bulbs, and I'm sure we've all seen things sticking out of the trash cans that say, somebody's in a different planet, if they think that's going to get picked up. It might be something to consider either with mailing a tax bill or some mailings that are done to the residents with, a punch list of what you should put or what you should not put in these trash bins, because I know I've gotten a couple of calls where my trash wasn't picked up and I go by there and they got like a telephone pole sticking out of this thing.
Well, it's
So-
kind of like the calendar we send out every year, right?
Yeah, right. All right, thank you.
Are there any questions from members of the council? Any questions from members of the public? Any questions from members of the public? Thank you. Moving on to bid 2025-189 Alpha, police personnel uniforms. This is found on page 17. Good evening, Major. Just reintroduce and take it over.
Good evening, Major Andy Sullivan for the Police Department. The Police Department went out to bid for police personnel uniforms and received 2 bids. The Police Department recommends awarding the bid to Barney's as they were because they bid on the majority of the items and have provided exceptional service to our police department over the years. The other bidder, Brigham Industries of Massachusetts, bid only on boots, which are rarely purchased through this bid. If approved, spending authority in the amount of $50,000 would be sourced from budget code 30-260, miscellaneous police gear and uniforms.
Thank you. Any questions from members of this committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the council? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Thank you, Major.
Thank you.
We come to the part of the bid package where I will go to the committee, to members of the council, to members of the public. If there is any item on the bid package that you wish to pull for discussion, that would be the time. I'll give everyone a moment, though I know we've had a good week to review. Is there anything from members of this council that they would like to pull for discussion? Thank you. Are there any items members of the council would like to pull for discussion? Councilman Lattisaw.
Item number 8, 2025-216, found on page 26, towing services. And item number 12, 2025-209, found on page 35, Lucas 3 service agreement. And bear with me 1 minute. May have one other. Item number 13, 2025-180, structural firefighting helmets, found on page 39.
Thank you. I will ask Councilwoman Travis and Councilman Ricks. Item number 16 is the fabrication and delivery of welcome signs. Would you like me to allocate that just so you can make a few words? Thank you. Item number 16, bid 2025-187, is the joint ARPA funds for the ward, the welcome signs. So I'll just call that out for you. I'll go to the councilwoman and the Councilman Ricks. Thank you. And are there any items that members of the public would like to discuss? Are there any items members of the public would like to discuss? Thank you. So we will go in order as it was requested. So the first up would be item number 8. This was requested by Councilman Lattisaw. This is DPW towing services. This is found on page 26. It's bid 216. Good evening, Director. Director, after you're introduced, Councilman Lattiser, you have the floor.
Eric Earls, Public Works.
Thank you. On towing services, who has that contract now?
I believe it's Ronnie's.
It's Ronnie's that has it now?
Yes.
And aren't you looking to add Ronnie's on to it with this item right here? It says, Ronnie's Towing and Recovery. The Department of Public Works is requesting an exception to notice for towing services required by the Automotive Division. The vendor has heavy truck, blah, blah, blah. If Ronnie's has it already, why do you need to add Ronnie's on now for an additional 20 grand?
Because
Or for 20,000?
it's expiring from last year.
I'm sorry?
It's a 56.6. It's expiring.
Okay, so you're simply looking to renew this?
Francis says yes.
And I assume that's what you want to do?
That is correct.
Have you used any of this towing money so far?
Yeah, we regularly use Ronnie's.
And you had a contract with Ronnie's, right?
Yes, the one that's expiring.
Okay, so it doesn't tell us that. It just says 1 year from date of award. When, at least I don't see, when does this contract or when did this contract expire?
I apologize. I don't have my stuff quite in order. We don't. I'm sorry. We do not currently have a contract with Ronnie's. I apologize.
I see, Director, if you don't mind, I see the purchasing director would like to make a statement. Please identify.
Francis Gomez, Purchasing Director.
Thank you. You want to clarify this?
Yes, so last year, DPW asked for a 56.6 exception to bid because Ronnie's was the only towing service available close by to rescue our truck drivers from the landfill when needed. Therefore, it was only asked for a 1 year term. This a 56.6 isn't, I'm gonna go to Ronnie's and say, hey, there's an award, here's a contract with us. No, that's just spending authority in order to use Ronnie's towing, which is for heavy duty trucks, if I'm not mistaken. So therefore, since the year is over, which I don't have the information right now, maybe Eric can get it, but it was last year that we asked for the spending authority. It's expiring due to the 56 exception, which is the ordinance. And that's why they're coming back to ask for more money for this fiscal year.
So when we award spending authority, we don't just, give you a blank check and a credit card and say, take off forever. It has a time limit to it. And what I'm asking is, when did the time run out on the spending authority or the contract for this item?
And Eric can get you that information.
November.
November of 2024?
It hasn't expired yet. Yes, November 2024.
The contract expires November of 2024. So I don't understand why this is being listed as a 56.6, and I don't understand why the contract period is being shown as 1 year from date of award. Why is this, seems to be so confusing here?
The language, maybe the language isn't accurate as to 1 year from date of award. It was probably meant to be 1 year from the expiration date, which would make sense because then there wouldn't be any overlap. But I don't know exactly right now.
But typically, it will give us, when the contract expires. As a matter of fact, in the binder, typically it'll give us the previous award. It'll show us the previous award, as other things in this binder do. And now as I'm looking through it again, that's not in here either. At least it's not in mine anyhow. So there just seems to be, some miscommunication here. And with this item, here we have a bid that we're not told what the expiration date is, so we have no clue if it expired already or not. And it's calling for 1 year from the date of the award. I think that, the accuracy of these things needs to certainly be looked at.
Sorry. I also think, I'm sorry. I also understand that any of these could have been answered by an email earlier in the week, right? I apologize that Christie's not here, but any one of these questions could have been cleared up well before this meeting.
And I'm not even going to bother wasting my breath to repeat why I asked the questions on the floor. I'm done for now.
Are there any further questions or comments from members of this committee? Questions, comments from members of the council? Questions, comments from members of the public?
One more question.
Question for whom, Councilman?
I'd like a copy of the contract for this that just expired in November.
The councilman requested to have sent to him a copy of the contract that expired.
Can I make a comment, please?
Oh, please identify.
Francis Gomez, Purchasing Director.
And what were you going to say?
So when it comes to a 56 exception to bid, it is very different from an advertised bid, which usually departments come to council to either extend the contract or increase the amount requested. A 56-6 exception to bid is the department in need of going to the particular vendor because this is a sole vendor or the most efficient vendor, or maybe they have no other choice or no time to go out to bid, et cetera, et cetera. A 56-6 exception does not have a contract signed by myself or between DPW and the vendor at all. This is only for the spending authority because our threshold is so low. If they were to use it maybe a couple of times and get to $2,500, they would have to come to council to ask for more money. So that's why for the fiscal year of 2025, which we are in, DPW is asking for spending authority for Ronnie's Towing. There is no contract signed. It's already a year that they've used it. They probably need more money, and that's where they're asking for more money for the fiscal year 2025, where 2024 was, and maybe, I don't have the numbers, already expended, and that's my only comment.
Thank you. So there's no contract, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman, what the director just alluded to was a 56-6 on our documents tonight. My question is she absolutely positive that the one that the director just testified to is expiring in November? Is she positive that that was a 56-6? However, let me rephrase my question. I am requesting a copy of all paperwork and documents pertaining the issue of Ronnie's towing service for the last year.
Thank you. That is on record that Councilman Lattiser is requesting all documents and paperwork on Ronnie's Towing pertaining to this 56-6 and under Ronnie's Towing.
Pertaining to the contract, as I'll term it, that Director Earls testified to is expiring in November.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. I'm just going to make a statement for the record since a more general topic was seemingly brought up in relation to this bid. Well, rather not bid, but 56.6. So a concern that many of us on the council have, I suppose I should just speak for myself here for the moment, but something that Rhode Island has unfortunately gained a reputation for, Rhode Island municipalities and the like, that we all should be very cognizant of and trying to correct, is the reputation of knowing a guy and knowing that in the decades past, I don't think so much nowadays in most or all municipalities. I don't think that this is really so much of an issue as it was in the past. But there were certainly times in the past where different cities and towns, it would be a matter of, okay, know someone in the administration, go ahead, have that person just make a phone call, and they'll go with the vendor where they have a friend or the like. That's why, even though this process with the bids and the like may seem Byzantine and even counterproductive at times, that's why we go through this whole exercise every couple of weeks to make sure that we're being as transparent with the public as possible about why we're going with one vendor or another. And one would imagine that there has to be more than one vendor across this entire state who offers this particular type of towing service. So I think that the more that we can stick with the more traditional process and avoid going the 56.6 route, that's something to be preferred, even if we just wind up in the exact same position of spending the exact same amount of money and someone having to unfortunately put in extra hours of work to get to the same result. At the end of the day, it can give the public more confidence that on this particular item and in so many other items that the public is not seeing, that everyone is doing the right thing to try to protect those taxpayer dollars and make sure that the most qualified and lowest priced bidders are getting that work. So I'd like to commend Councilman Lattiser for following up on that. And I'm certainly not saying anything whatsoever to disparage this particular vendor. I'm sure that they do an excellent job. It's just a matter of we need to have that extra degree of transparency because this is a municipal government. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Any questions, comments from members of the public? Questions, comments from members of the public? Thank you. Continuing on the order as they were presented. Item number 12 is bid 2025-209. That is Lucas 3 service agreement. That is found on page 35. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Assistant Chief Umbenhauer from the Fire Department.
Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
Chief, in your position paper, you state that any lapse of service contract by the city would result in a loss of a point of sale discount, which is reflected here, offered by Stryker Medical. This 10% discount is only applied to service contract quotes if a device has had an uninterrupted service plan since the original purchase date. Do we comply with that?
We do.
And when was that original purchase date?
The original Lucas 3s were purchased 4 years ago. They were under a 1-year warranty, standard warranty. And then once that warranty was about to expire, then we got a 3-year contract. And then that brought us to the end of the contract, which is ending this month. And then we're looking to go into a new 3-year contract to maintain that uninterrupted service.
And I also see here, which I think this is actually a good thing, that solely at the discretion of the fire department, this contract could be canceled or modified at any time, right? So if for some reason you're unhappy with the service, it can be canceled with a prorated refund without any penalties.
Correct. Our biggest reason for that was if we added a device or we removed a device from service, or were we locked into paying 3-year contract on the device that we no longer own, and the reply to that was no. It can be canceled at any time if the device is no longer owned by the city and you don't want to have the service, and they'll prorate you the difference in what you've paid for the year already.
Chief, I'm curious too as to why this bid is coming to us so late, given the significant importance of this particular bid.
So a couple reasons, and I apologize for not putting this in the recommendation letter that I put forward. It was getting lengthy as is. One of them was Stryker is historically a little slow at getting me quotes. They are a very busy company, and I try to get out as long as I can out to try to request the quotes. The other reason was they usually offer multiple quotes when they do put in, depending on the level of service you want. Some of them offer replacement battery service and different things. So we need to, once we actually get the quotes in, which were a little late getting to us, it took us a while to review the quotes. The one instance in this case specifically was whether or not we needed to include battery replacement for the 3 years. We have just received new batteries for all 3 devices under warranty. We wanted to confirm that those batteries there was going to be enough batteries and that those batteries were going to be shipped to us before we decided to go with this plan, which does not include the battery replacement. So we wanted to make sure that the equipment that we thought we were getting and the service contract that we thought we wanted, which was the less expensive one, was appropriate before we made the decision.
All right, thank you for that. On the invoice that I'm looking at from Stryker as well, it has the ProCare total $17,131.50. It also has a ProCare annual payment of $5,710.50. What is that?
That's just the yearly. So it's a 3-year contract. It's $5,710.50 per year.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. All right, thank you, Chief. That's all I have on that, Chairman.
Are there any questions from members of this committee? Are there any questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Thank you, Chief. Next is item number 13, bid 2025-180 structural firefighting helmets. This is found on page 39. Chief, please identify. Councilman Lattiser, you have the floor.
Assistant Chief Elmenhauer from the Fire Department.
Thank you. On this item, it states that the standard requires retirement and replacement of protective gear that does not meet inspection/testing standards or protective gear that has met the maximum service life of 10 years. Who performs the inspection/testing? What are the qualifications of the individuals that are doing that testing? And what does that testing consist of?
So I'm going to have you recall when we came to you, I believe over the last month for turnout gear. It's the same process. This is considered part of the turnout gear standard. So we have our own in-house people. Typically, it's the training division who performs this. They are qualified and certified under the NFPA standard for test and inspection of personal protective equipment. That's done by typically the manufacturers provide that training of the equipment that we're using. A lot of it's online web-based stuff now where they go through a class. They answer all the questions, they pass a test, and then they become qualified. So annually, when they go through their protective gear, like the normal coat and pant that you expect, they don't just go through the coat and pant, they also do the helmets, the gloves, the hoods, the boots. The whole ensemble is what gets inspected when we do those annual gear inspections, not just the coat and pants.
Okay. And on those pieces of equipment or clothing that are tested, those items that are or have been determined to fail or not meet up to the standards, is there a record kept of those particular items that I assume are going to be disposed?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's required by NFPA. Yep.
Okay. So
That we keep track of all gear through its life cycle through the fire department. When it was issued,
okay.
when it was used, if it had any damage that occurred to it from, debris, anytime that there's any
Sure.
damage that occurs to it, it's supposed to be recorded. And then when it was placed out of service and how it was disposed of.
And how long do you keep those records for?
Perpetually.
I'm sorry?
For indefinitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they have to be by NFPA standard in case, 20 years down the road, somebody has a claim of an injury. We have a record
Right.
of their gear.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members of this committee? Further questions from members of the council? Any further questions from members of the public? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
I called on item number 16, bid 2025-187, fabrication and delivery of welcome signs. I just wanted to ask Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Ricks to please just identify what these signs are. I know that it's part of the ARPA funds, and make a statement if they'd like. Councilwoman Travis.
We have signs going on Seaview Drive, which is a very dangerous road. And hopefully this is going to help slow them down. And Pequot Avenue. These are streets that are fairly speeders all the time. They're parallel with Oakland Beach Avenue. And those are the two new streets I put them in.
Thank you. Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So this would be the third sign for Ward 2. The bids on the first two signs came in lower than expected. And so as it seemed that there was some additional money for that type of spending, went with the third most popular sign as well, per the survey that I released, which received 347 total responses. And that sign being for a Welcome to Lakewood sign right over by and facing opposite of the Welcome to Norwood sign over by Station 2. So this way, when motorists are driving down Post Road one direction, they'll be welcomed to Lakewood, just as they're currently, when driving in the other direction, being welcomed to Norwood.
Great, thank you. Any other follow-up comments from members of this council? Members of the public? Thank you so much. May I have a motion on PCR 92-24 resolution relative to bids?
Favorable action.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 2 is PCR 93-24 resolution relative to abatements. Good evening, Director.
Good evening. Neil Dupuy, Director of Assessing. I apologize for my voice, but dealing with a little cold tonight. This month we have abatements for you in the amount of $9,788.35, with the exception of one $70 adjustment for a granted appeal. They were all new exemptions, but I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of this committee? Questions from members of the council? Questions from members of the public? Questions from members of the public? Thank you, Neil. May I have a motion on PCR 93-24?
Move favorable action.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The time is now 6:30 and the Finance Committee is closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next committee to meet is the Public Safety Committee, and that can take place at this time. Thank you.
Come on. Jesus. You people.
That's mine.
Great. McElroy. That's mine. Good evening. The Public Safety Committee Oh. Red dot. Hello? Oh. Is the acceptance of minutes August 19th? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Aye.
Aye. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Thank you, gentlemen. First item is PCR 94-24, resolution relative to claims. The first item is Karen, oh, I'm sorry. First, acceptance of minutes from the committee meeting held on August 19th. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we're at PCR 94-24. The first claim is for Karen Gabarian. The recommendation is to approve. I spoke with council liaison who spoke to finance, and the reason the dollar amount is 160 is because she decided to only get one tire. See the two tires installed? She only went with the one, so her request is for the 160. Do we, now, any questions from the committee?
This one I had some uncertainty about. Perhaps the chair may be able to answer, or
Yep, go ahead.
or someone else may be able to answer. So I did see that Firestone at 74 cents more, $115.74. That would have included the installation. So it was my sense from the documentation that the basis for the 160 was the difference between the cost of the installation versus just the cost of the tire. So I wasn't entirely certain where we were getting the 160 as opposed to just going with the 115.74.
I made the same, the 115 did not include installation.
Correct. However, the Firestone 115.74, that estimate did include the installation.
So do you want to make an amendment to the 115.74?
Yes.
All right, hold on first. Before we do that, any other questions from the committee? Any questions from the council? Any questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have an amendment? Do we need a PCR first? Okay, thank you very much. What do we have for our, let's go to the solicitor. All right, so,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
If the motion is a favorable motion, it can remain as part of the existing item. So the motion would need to be made in this example, favorable action in a designated amount.
Yep, thank you.
Move to approve in the amount of $115.74.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well done. The next item, let me get my paperwork here, is for Joanne Fiore. And the recommendation is for $781. Questions from the committee? Questions from the council? Questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve as recommended by the department, $781.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next for Jennifer McKenna. The recommendation is to approve in the amount of $279.72. My paper. Any questions from the committee? Council? Public? Any questions from the public? Any questions from the public? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve in the amount of $279.72.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The next one is Michael Paraso. And the recommendation is to approve in the amount of $214.14. Questions from the committee? Questions from the council? Councilman Lattiser.
Oh, yes, Chairman, it's actually a question pertaining to all of these items. And some time back, you had made the request of having the council claim checklist, which I have on the back of all my sheets. The top 5 items have all been initialed off as you've requested.
Right.
But every one of these has not been signed off on as any notifications being sent out, where it says notified of meeting either or. They have not been checked off by anyone. Is this
Well,
what
the
your policy
notification
is, or what?
The notification was required, based on finance procedure, the notification was only required if they were denied, so that they could appear here to plead their case to us, as opposed to us holding it and waiting and hoping we got hold. So the only ones that would be notified are the ones that are denied. And since you asked the question, I'm going to answer it now. There's only one claim tonight that's been denied. I spoke to council liaison, who spoke to Marge in finance. Marge did reach out to that person, sent them an email, and so they have been notified, even though it's not checked off on the list. So I'm being proactive with that.
Right. So going forward,
Yes.
we would expect the denied ones to also be checked off
Right.
as well, right? Okay.
And if it's not, I asked Joanne to check with them and get me some information, so I have it for us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion? Let me check with the public one more time. In the matter of Michael Paraso, are there any comments from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve in the amount of $214.14.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item, Robert Weldley. And the recommendation is to approve in the amount of $266.50. Questions from the committee? From the council? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve in the amount of $266.50.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is Michael Antonelli. I tell you, with these names, my years of teaching have come in handy. The recommendation is to approve in the amount of $850. Questions from the committee? From the council? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve in the amount of $850.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just give me a minute. The next item is Ariana Petroselli. And we have the recommendation is to deny this, as I said, Councilman, this is the one where I reached out, I made sure they were notified. So do we have questions from the committee? Questions from the council?
I do.
Councilman Sinapi.
So the recommendation for denial, while I understand it, it's at odds with the claim for Joanne Fiore, where similar circumstances happened and it was recommended for approval. In both cases, it's a vehicle operating on a roadway, and in both cases, there's a city vehicle from which debris fell and damaged the claimant's vehicle. I'm not sure if there's another part they're distinguishing it based on, but based on at least the basic facts, they seem to be similar, if not identical, for the purposes of the claim. So I'm unclear as to why we should deny this one when we approve Fiore.
Councilman Ricks.
Thank you. So reviewing the Fiore claim, with that one, there is clarity as to, in the Fiore situation, debris came out of the city vehicle, hitting the claimant's windshield, causing damage. Whereas with the Petroselli claim, the description of that it is a bit vague there. The description of incident reads, I was behind the town of Warwick truck on 295 southbound. A rock came from the truck and hit my windshield, causing it to crack. So oftentimes when a rock is kicked up from a vehicle, that does happen. But as per the
Fiore.
Well, in the Petroselli matter, where the city department made the recommendation to deny, city referred to this as a road hazard related to normal driving conditions. That indicates to me that it's not a matter of a rock falling off of the vehicle, and certainly the city should be liable in that sort of situation. But this all seems to indicate to me that it was one of those rocks or gravel that was kicked up from the vehicle, which unfortunately that happens, and the driver of the vehicle wouldn't be negligent. So for those reasons, unfortunately, that's a hazard of driving.
Also, may I please?
Of course.
No problem. I did ask Director Earl on that for the same reason. And the explanation Councilman Ricks just gave is his. There's no evidence that that rock came off the truck or was anyway due to negligence on our part. However, the photo evidence on the Fiore one lent itself to him believing that, yes, we were at fault. That stuff should have been tied down better or put on the truck better. So that he felt that the city did have responsibility on the Fiore, whereas there was no clear evidence that that rock came from the city truck per se. Back to you, sir.
So that makes perfect sense. And now I see the description of the claim on the recommendation memo versus what the claimant provided. I can see the difference, especially now it could be kicked up from the truck as opposed to off the top, which I agree is very different. Also, just as a side note, the quotes they got are highway robbery. They need to go to a mechanic. But no, all right, that makes perfect sense to me. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Comments from the public? Comments from the public? We have a motion.
Move to deny.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I believe our last one for the evening is Noel Shaughnessy. And the recommendation is to approve in the amount of $300, which is the cap. Do we have questions from the committee? Questions from the council? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Questions from the public? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Move to approve in the amount of $300.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The Public Safety Committee meeting is adjourned at 6:45. That's me. Well done, gentlemen.
The Committee on Appointments is eligible to begin at this time.
Good evening. The time is now 6:46 and appointments comes to order. First up, we have some very old minutes. February 5th, 2024, the last time we all met. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Just one appointment this evening that requires council approval. There are a number on the general docket. So this is a reappointment, meaning that the individual, Mr. Joseph Jusela, is not required to be before us this evening. Just the same, his paperwork is in order in the packet, along with a resume for a refresher. Are you here, sir? Mr. Jusela? Jusila? Mr. Jusila? No? Okay. Any questions of the committee?
Nope. Make a motion to approve.
We do have one from the council.
Sorry.
Councilman Ricks?
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly thank Mr. Jusila for his service on the Historic Cemeteries Commission through the present time and into the future. It's one of these commissions that does a lot of thankless work, hard work, but without their work, we wouldn't have the great city that we do without all of these great volunteers who are putting in their time, effort to clean up these historic cemeteries and do similar work, volunteers across the city on so many of these different commissions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I couldn't agree more. We're very fortunate to have folks step up for all these different boards and commissions and dedicate their time. We know it's not easy. Do we have a motion? Sorry, anyone from the public? Comments, questions? Okay, public? Hearing none.
Make a motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that concludes our business here on the Appointments Committee. Time is now 6:49.
And the final committee this evening is the Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs Committee, and is eligible to begin at this time.
The City Council Committee on Public Properties, Land Use, and Community Affairs comes to order at 6:50. First up, acceptance of the minutes from the meeting held on September 16th, 2024. Do we have a motion?
Move favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So, let's see. And the City Council Solicitor can correct me here if I'm mistaken. On this one item in front of the committee, the stenographer is not present, so it's not a public hearing. However, we do want to ensure that the public comment is heard on this, and it seems that because we only have 9 minutes or so before the full city council meeting starts, it may be logical to hold off the hearing, that is the public comment from members of the city council on this until the start of the full city council meeting?
If it's the committee's prerogative, it is eligible at this time for the committee to send a recommendation of this item to the floor and to take the public comment on second passage as part of the hearing before the full council later this evening.
Yeah. First, I would ask that any member of the comment speaking at the mic needs to identify themselves. But further, this is, so the mics are not picking up anyone who is not at the mic, so that's an issue right there. But before you do speak, I do need to remind you that we are not currently in the public comment period. Therefore, we on the committee do need to continue with our business, and there will be a public comment period on this, but that is not this time right here now.
No, I understand. Richard Langseth, Budlong Farm, and I'm just raising a point of order that the party's not here. Thank you.
So we have not yet started a hearing on any particular item.
So do you want a motion to move this to the floor?
Correct. So
moved.
All right, we have a motion to move to the floor, full city council without recommendation on item 1, PCO 8-24, order on the abandonment of portions of Strawberry Field Road, Murray Street, Bunker Street, and Fieldview Drive, Rhode Island Airport Corporation. Petitioner, second passage. Do we have a second to that motion?
Just a point of order. That motion is move to the full council without a recommendation for public, to
Correct.
include public
That
comment.
is the full motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
There being no further business in front of this committee, we adjourn at 6:54 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we will start the full council meeting at 7 o'clock. We will do roll call, salute to the flag, general communications, and then I will ask my colleagues if we can move that last item up. So we'll do it right at the start of the council meeting. Thank you. We'll see you at 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. I call the October 7th, 2024 City Council meeting to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. McAllister.
Here.
Mr. Foley. Mr. Gephardt. Mr. Howe.
Here.
Mr. Lattiser.
Here.
Mr. McElroy.
Here.
Mr. Ricks.
Here.
Mr. Sinapi. Ms. Travis.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. Councilwoman Travis, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose bright stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good evening again. We're now under general communications. This is the announcements of congratulations, condolences, or community events. I have one. I'd like to ask everyone for a moment of silence for Chris Porcelli, who passed away recently, a longtime Warwick resident, involved, him and his family involved in a lot of Warwick community groups and events. So if we could have a moment of silence for him. Thank you. Are there any other council members have anything under general communications? Councilwoman Travis.
I also have a moment of silence for Joseph Joe the Barber Laquali. Joe has, he ran and he owned his, the barber shop for over 60 years. His father had it before that. And I believe it's probably the oldest business still in Oakland Beach. And I've been a longtime friend of the family since I was a teenager, so we've known them very well. People actually stood in line there for over 2.5 hours for his wake. It's sad, sad for the community.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. Anybody else? Councilwoman, are you all set? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would also like to ask for a moment of silence for another Warwick individual. Just recently found out he had passed. This individual was very active in community affairs, had presented before the city council and other councils for very many years, and that is Mr. Phil DeCall. He had passed away at some point earlier, and it was just brought to my attention recently.
Oh, I did not know that. Thank you for letting us know. So we'll do a moment of silence. Thank you. Any other members of the council have anything under general communications? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to executive communications. There are none. A is the acceptance of the minutes from the council meeting held on September 16th. Councilman Howe,
Move favorable action.
second by Councilman Foley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. There are a few announcements of appointments. Number one, announcement of appointments to the planning board. Councilman Gephardt.
Sorry, give me a moment. All right, here we go. Tammy Bouchard Baker to the planning board.
Thank you. And then there were three, and these are appointments that do not require
Correct.
confirmation. And the Harbor Management Commission, Councilman Gephardt.
Olivia Cabral, Ward 1. John Dickerson, Ward 7. Michael Jarbo, Ward 1.
Thank you. At this time, I'm going to ask my colleagues, is there any objections to moving item number 1 under unfinished business, PCO 8-24, to the top of the agenda and take that up at this time? Is there any objections from members of the council? Hearing none, we will now take up PCO 8-24 in order of abandonment of portions of Strawberry Field Road. This is for second passage. We will have public comment on this as it did not go through committee. Councilman Ricks.
Move to hear PCO 8-24.
Thank you. So why don't we get a recommendation to start us off for second passage? Councilman Howe?
Respectfully request second favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Okay, it's been moved in second, so now we will begin discussions here on this. So again, now we're taking up PCO 8-24. This is for second passage. I believe we're all aware of this. This is the third time that it's been presented to the council. We've had a number of hours of good debate and discussion on this. So I want to open it up. Are there any members of the council that have any questions or comments at this time? Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to go on record as saying for the last month, as the purpose of delaying a month of second passage is to address any concerns and issues. I've received 0 phone calls from my colleagues. I've received no questions, and there's been no concerns brought to my attention after the previous concerns and discussions brought. So I thank my colleagues and look forward to a second passage for the community of Strawberry Field West. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Howe. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to request clarification on this because my understanding was this was a continuation of the public hearing that we recently had.
Solicitor Walters. I mean, I can answer it.
Councilman, PCO 824 was initially heard at the August 19th meeting for first passage public hearing. At that time, the item was continued for first passage to the September 4th meeting. At the September 4th meeting, the council voted favorable action for first passage by a vote of 6-2, one abstention or one absent. Councilman Sinapi was absent. So first passage and the public hearing was achieved, and first passage was achieved. This item is before us for second passage. At the committee earlier this evening, the Public Properties Committee sent it along with no recommendation, but to take the public comment before the full body as we deliberate the second passage, and that's where we are at this point in the evening.
So on the September 4th meeting, was the public hearing closed?
Yes.
It was closed.
Yes. Councilman Foley moved it. It was seconded, and the public hearing was closed by an 8-0 voice vote
Okay.
prior to the immediately preceding the passage vote, which passed 6-2.
All right, thank you. I'll reserve my additional comments, Mr. President, until we hear from members of the public.
Okay. Councilman Gephardt.
Just one question. So I voted no on this in the 6-2. I was one of the two no votes. But there was mention. We haven't heard much from the residents around the area. There was mention that there was some sort of petition or list of signatures of folks who are in support of it. So if we were able to see that, that may sway my vote in the other direction. So I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you.
I can forward. I did have a picture sent to me of that, but also please understand, Councilman, and to my colleagues, this went through the proper procedure of going before the planning board. There was many public hearings through RIAC at the Annex building. There were planning boards hearings. There were numerous public hearings that the neighbors went to. And quite honestly, when it comes to the council, their attitude is, we elect you to do this job, and I'll do the job. And that's why I'm here supporting it. And the reason why you have not seen the citizens of that area come is because they understand that this is a berm to protect the neighborhood from a cargo facility that we have no say in. The cargo facility is, let me withdraw that. They understand that we are abandoning roads that are in an area that the airport owns to be able to build this berm to protect the area and have that berm put up. And please be clear, they are not happy that there is a cargo facility going in the airport, but the airport owns the property and they are building that cargo facility. This is to abandon the road so we may build a berm to protect the residents of the neighborhood, as it was discussed through the entire 1-year process to this point. So, but I will send you, I have it on right here, and I'll send you that copy. Thank you.
Councilman Ricks.
I'll just briefly state before this is opened up to public comment, and then after this statement, I'll reserve my remaining time. I received a couple of phone calls this afternoon that made certain allegations about this plan. Obviously, allegations of any nature, of anything being misleading or the like, is of great concern to me. But they are also allegations of a nature where one would expect that there can be objective evidence. One would expect for that to be produced. So for me to lend credibility to any of that, especially at this stage, after all of the steps that this has gone through, after I know that Councilman Howe, he has done his due diligence on this matter, after the city administration and the planning department have done their due diligence on this matter, in addition to the planning board. If I'm going to be influenced by those types of allegations as to this plan, then I'm going to need to see evidence of it as opposed to last-minute phone calls. I'm not going to simply vote to hold or vote to deny something based on what one or two people are saying. This is why we have this whole very long process, including that 1 month between first and second passage. If there's an opportunity, if there is that additional type of information, evidence to be presented, this is why we provide a full month. So while I am and can be sympathetic to some items coming before us at rather the last minute. This is a bit of a different nature. So I do anticipate that we may hear a little bit more about that, but I'll leave that for the members of the public who may want to discuss that. And I'll just put that forward as that's really the standard that I hold here this evening, is if there are new allegations coming in front of us, I want to see some evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Any questions or comments from members of the public on PCO 8-24?
Richard Langseth, Bud Long Farm Road in Warwick. I'd like everybody to note that the requester is not public, it is not here. The Airport Corporation decided not to show up. They're not here to answer any questions. And I appreciate Mr. Ricks's point. I wasn't aware that we needed to present beforehand. I thought that the second passage was a kind of a new revelation that we were going to go through the same steps that we went through the first passage, but maybe I'm wrong. The main problem that we have is that the berm is not complete. The berm is washing away. The RIDEM has a complaint in hand. They haven't seeded it. They haven't done anything to protect it, and it's washing into the storm drain. This is a $4 million project that RIAC has decided to fund on its own. It has no money to do this. The FAA has denied them the money, the AIP money, and they have decided not to float a bond. They have no funds. So if you go down to Strawberry Field, you'll see a berm washing away. This is a $4 million contract that some contractor got the rights to do, and they never finished the work probably because they weren't paid. I don't know. It would be far better if RIAC were here to answer questions like this. These are not allegations. This is what you see when you go over there. In addition, I have received an answer to a complaint that I filed with the Attorney General between the time of the first passage and the second passage. And what that says is that the chief counsel for the Rhode Island Airport Corporation says that the roundabout, which is an integral part of this, is not on RIAC property. It's on the state highway. She admitted this after 2 years of my try to get her to do it. She finally put it in writing to the Attorney General that they don't even own the property. Now that's a $20 million build that they have no money for. So what I would suggest to the council is that if you want to move forward with this, definitely put a provision in the deed itself, that if they don't build these things, the property comes back. I think that's reasonable. I think that any experienced person would know that when you're selling something with the provision that somebody's going to do something, you put it in the deed. This is a common business practice. Now, if that's too difficult to do tonight, especially because RIAC's not even here, continue it. Do some investigation, because we don't want to give away what we're calling a people's park for some promise that RIAC has made that they don't even show up for, number one, and number two, they don't have any money to do it with. Now I apologize for not putting this in writing beforehand, but I thought that we were going through this process in Novo, a whole new process over and over again, but I could be wrong. But I really think we need to be reasonable about this. Why aren't these people here? Why didn't they finish the berm? Why are they proposing a roundabout that we all know is on a state highway? And if they were here, I'd ask them questions, but they're not even here. Now there's a professional engineer, Don Miniker, who wrote to the FAA in an email on August 4th, 2023, and said that the roundabout will be on airport property. That's not true. Her legal counsel the next year wrote saying the roundabout's not on airport property to the Attorney General in a sworn statement. This is not hearsay. This is sworn testimony to the Attorney General of the state of Rhode Island. So I would just urge you to be cautious. Think for a minute. Where is RIAC? Why aren't they here? This whole thing is a farce. They don't have the money. The reason why they don't have the money is because I demanded that they have a public hearing for the private activity bond. And when I made that to the RIAC board, they turned purple. They said, what do you need? What do you mean a public hearing? I said, that's the law. You need a public hearing. And then the next month they turned around and they said, oh, we're not going to do the bond anyway. We're just going to take it out of pocket. And they can't do that. And I really appreciate your indulgence over all these months. But you know what? This is a very important thing for the city of Warwick. We have a 20-acre piece of land that's absolutely wonderful. The people are using it for all kinds of parks and recreation purposes. It doesn't matter whether the airport owns it or not. The airport's part of the government. So what? They're not a private entity. They own some property. The property's public unless it becomes private through use. It's a farce. And I'm losing my patience too. And I really think we need to think twice about this. And if anybody has any questions about this, I'm perfectly willing to answer them. And I'm perfectly willing to present this stuff in writing if that's what it takes. But of course, it's going to take a continuation at this point. And by the way, what's the rush? These people are not even here. They don't have any money to build it. They're not building it. They have a $4 million contract to build a wall. Where's the wall? On the north side of Strawberry Field Road, there's no reason why they hadn't finished that. And that's what's needed. If anything's needed, the berm is needed on the north side of Strawberry Field Road. They don't need it down in the strawberry fields. There's nothing down there for the berm to stop the noise of. The facility's on the other side of Strawberry Field Road. So maybe what you should do is write them a note saying, how come you haven't built the berm north of Strawberry Field Road? They had a $4 million contract to do it. And where is it? They took the trucks and drove away. You know, at some point, we have to say that there's a little lack of credibility here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on PCO 8-24?
Good evening, council people. This is Michelle Comar, Ward 1. And I too had some questions for RIAC that I asked last public hearing that were not answered. We knew from testimony from RIAC through answering questions that FAA is not funding the berm. But I asked, well, what funding sources are they using? Never got an answer. It's unknown if they have the funds. We heard through testimony from our planning director that the berm doesn't conform to existing zoning, which is residential. It doesn't comply with our existing zoning. I would have asked RIAC too, which we heard through testimony, that this only reduces the noise by 1 to 4 decibels. And that doesn't maybe put it in context of what are the decibels that these people are exposed to. I'm just going by my memory that noise acquisitions, the threshold is 65 decibels. So from 65 decibels, maybe they're 64 and under. They only get a 1 to 4 decibel decrease with the berm, hardly called a berm for noise mitigation. And I wonder if the residents really realize how little protection this berm does afford. So RIAC's not here. I think there are questions that are still outstanding, and I hope the council continues this second passage until RIAC shows up, showing that this is an important project to them, and they're here to answer questions. Meanwhile, the city has not hired an appraiser to look at what this property value is worth, and that's to protect the city's finances, budget, and what the taxpayers have been subsidizing RIAC and the state international airport for decades. And I think we deserve a fair and marketable, fair market price on this property to be assessed by the city's appraiser, hired by them and paid by the city. Not just some quick check that was done by the city, and not go by RIAC's figures and their hired appraiser. You wouldn't do that for your house. You'd hire your own independent appraiser. So the Warwick taxpayers have been subsidizing a state airport for decades. We've had property acquisitions that RIAC has taken for noise, and we lost that tax revenue year after year. And also those incremental increases that we would have gained as taxes. So taxpayers had to make up the difference to balance our increasing budget every year. We also, on the taxpayers' dollar, provide police, fire, and rescue services to the airport. We get nothing in return. The $500,000 that RIAC was paying the city, RIAC has ceased to pay. So taxpayers subsidize the airport for police, fire, and rescue protection. There is no mutual aid. RIAC can't leave their post at the airport and come out and run to a private residence to provide rescue or police or fire service. That doesn't happen. So we're not getting compensated for our police, fire, and rescue services. So all this is on the taxpayers' back. And it's discouraging to hear the council do business like you wouldn't do your own home business and selling your property and not getting an outside appraisal that you pay for. Not a friendly handshake, or can you just catch somebody in the hallway and get an opinion? There's no appraisal that the city did. If the land trusts were before you, for the city to accept property or buy property, need a property survey. Is there phase 1, phase 2 assessment needed? We have to close any right of redemptions. There's all steps to be taken that aren't skipped. But this step was skipped here before the city council and not hiring an independent appraiser that the city and the taxpayers were paying for their interest, to look out for their interest. So I do have extra questions for RIAC. They're not here today. I ask that the council continue this second passage until they can be present. And also I request that the city do their own independent appraisal on the property's value. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on PCO 8-24?
Good evening, friends and neighbors. Jim Italiani, Ward 6. So we've talked about this a number of times. I've been to nearly half a dozen meetings on this matter. And I know that there are some powers that be that want to get this resolved basically at all cost. But there's some unresolved issues. Last time we had the discussion here about noise, the council president didn't allow me to continue speaking because I had spoken before, but on a different subject, which I said, dear friends, that I am an audioprocessologist. This is in my scope of practice. What we were told from RIAC by their own admission is that the berm was not going to protect the people from all the noise and the pollution. That is certainly doable, but we have to make sure that they do and plan it and fund it right. That does not mean that we approve it now. The other thing, dear friends, again, is their certified appraiser that talked here a couple meetings ago, who had more credentials than half of Boston College, admitted that the bid that he bid the land next to this international airport was based on property next to a single uncontrolled field. And nobody in this room even questioned, how could you come up with such a faux pas? Again, you can't approve a bid based on such faulty comparisons. We have a berm that's coming apart that's underfunded. Why are we allowing it? Why would we even think about passing this without being assured by RIAC in writing that these things to protect our citizens are going to be done, or we're going to take back the land? And as another member said, let's not get promises. Let's put it in the CC&Rs or put it in the deeds, and that cannot be done tonight. So, gentlemen, lady, it is your responsibility for we citizens that you do not pass this and you protect our needs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else from the public like to be heard on PCO 8-24 at this time?
How you doing, Council? My name's Ron Hawkins. I'm in Ward 3. And I oppose PCO 824, and I've said that right along. I don't understand how a piece of land, first of all, that's zoned for residential can be given for heavy industrial development. This is zoned as residential. Doesn't the zoning have to be changed first anyway? A lot of questions that I have, a lot of them for RIAC, and of course they're not here today. But I think the approval of this pretty much rubber stamps everything that they're doing over there. And I'm totally against the increase in air pollution, the noise pollution, the light pollution. And I've spoken to many of the residents over in the Strawberry Field West location, and they've mentioned a lot of concerns to me. Not everybody is on board with that, not even close. There are a couple that have said that they were okay with it just because of the berm, but that's ignorance. This berm is not going to do anything to help them in any three of those categories, and the FAA has already admitted that. The FAA has already admitted also that their air quality metrics in their 2024 symposium are flawed. We don't have the proper metrics. Rhode Island DEM has already done testing there, and it was over the cancer limits. How is politics more important than our children? You guys really, you go home, most of you have kids. Don't you look at them? This is ridiculous. At least stay this until we can get further clarification from them, and we need to get stuff in writing from these people. They don't put it in writing. They've already duped us many times already. Look at the extension that they just built on Main Street. Okay, that was to take passengers across to California, longer service. That's a lot of BS. They just wanted the larger planes there because the smaller 300 series can take people there. It's got greater lift and it's got higher capacity. Come on, people. Give us more time to look at this and get things in writing at least, and maybe look at some other options. Not everybody is against this, but at least let's do it right. They've been duping us through the whole master plan process right along, okay? And the environmental assessments are questionable. Let's just do this right. We all have to look at our kids at night. I come home, well, I'm retired now, but I come home at 5 o'clock, especially in the fall, in the winter, and it stinks. This is kerosene mist going up your nose, and kids are out there playing. You know, it's bad enough the way it is now, but making it worse is not making it better.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public like to be heard on PCO 8-24? Any other members of the public like to be heard on PCO 8-24? Any other members of the public like to be heard on PCO 8-24? Okay. Any members of the council like to be heard on 8-24? Councilman Lattiser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. And I'd like to thank all the members of the public for their comments as well. I find it, I actually find it offensive that the Airport Corporation is not here in attendance this evening. And that is quite concerning. So I would ask, are they not here because they don't want to address any more questions? Are they not here because they just feel it's not necessary? The airport, ever since I was first elected, has come to us with all kinds of promises, starting with we're going to increase the gate from 3 million to 5 million in 3 years. If the city council approves the runway extension, this was a major to-do. We're going to increase the gate. We're going to increase revenue. We're going to do all these kind of things. Key is increase revenue. Well, they haven't done that. And here it is in 2024, and you heard them answer my question at one of the last meetings. Their gate is still at 3.5 million. We've heard testimony this evening that they don't have the money to do this and they don't have the money to do that. Probably because they have not increased the gate no matter what they do, including taking over all the car rental lots and agencies. An example of the expense to the taxpayers for the city of Warwick providing emergency response services is one of the things we've recently had to deal with, which was tens of thousands of dollars that was spent on, I believe it was Engine 13, when they were in an accident responding to an emergency at the airport. I didn't see RIAC come to the plate and say, Warwick, we're going to take care of this. We're going to compensate you for the $40,000 or $50,000. That's an expense that is being paid for by the trust, which is being paid for by the taxpayers. Councilman Ricks brought up some very good questions, which were circumvented by RIAC, and his questions were about terminals, storage cargo areas. And they did not answer that question. They circumvented it. They said, we have a 20-year plan. A 20-year plan of what? My prediction will be, just like not increasing the gate, my prediction will be in 5 years or so, you're going to see those structures going up. The request for provisions in the deed, should this group, this honorable body decide to go forward with it, I think should be given careful consideration by the council and included in it. The question about the appraisers from the city doing an appraisal, I absolutely concur that we should have licensed appraisers, just like we are supposed to have for the revals, the property revals. You have licensed appraisers to do that. We should have a licensed appraiser that belongs or is hired by the city to do an appraisal on that property, and not take the appraisal from RIAC, who is the same organization that said, give us the runway, we're going to increase the gate to 5 million in 3 years. I don't hold a lot of confidence in RIAC's commitments or their performances since I've been sitting here on the city council. And because of all of these issues and because of them not being present here this evening and the perception of that lack of presence and the other issues that I have talked about, I will be maintaining a no vote on this item. For me, it's not necessarily disagreeing with the berm. For me, this is just a land power grab by the airport. My position is they've taken enough land, they've taken enough residential properties, and they have not compensated the city of Warwick for their takings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Sinapi, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just a quick blurb. So while I was here at the first meeting where this was held and discussed, I obviously wasn't here at the subsequent one where the first vote happened. I reviewed the materials, comments, and the meeting itself, for which I was absent, and I'm confident I can participate in this discussion and vote on the matter accordingly. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Ricks.
First, I'd like to say that I am, as opposed to anyone, against any new proposed cargo hangar or any sort of facility. I'm opposed to any additional cargo flights coming into the airport. We have a train station here in Warwick, right at that same location. Seems to me it should be just as convenient for UPS, FedEx, etc., to get cargo down through the train and less expensive. There are a lot of reasons to be opposed to these cargo planes coming in, which are going to be coming in at all hours and are noisier than passenger planes. But this item that's in front of us right now, whether we vote in favor of it or reject it, that cargo hangar and the like, that is going in there regardless. We have no control over that. So if I were to make a symbolic vote against the airport, it would be a symbolic vote. It wouldn't actually affect anything like that. What it would affect is the little bit, the something instead of nothing that the city and Councilman Howe negotiated, which is to benefit that neighborhood, which Councilman Howe has represented, that he has spoken with many neighbors there, and they prefer that berm to be there over nothing at all. It might have just very minimal reduction of sound. It certainly isn't going to do much of anything or nothing at all when the planes are overhead. It's not going to make the noise completely go away when the planes are on the other side of it either. But it's certainly going to help with the eyesore. And I do think that it's going to do something, not much, but something when it comes to the sound and the like from the other side. I'm not saying it's great, but it's something. And it is something that Councilman Howe has worked on, and I'm not exactly seeing any better proposed solutions here either to mitigate these effects for the neighbors. Again, I would love if the airport just backed away and didn't even attempt any of this ridiculous expansion. At first hearing, for the first passage, I spoke with the representatives of the airport and let them know that I view the airport as a black hole gobbling up homes and businesses, because we know that those homes and businesses, they don't just come back. Once they're sucked in, they don't return. I'll also say that I think of the term host, as in Warwick is the host city, as a relationship where some people like to think of the airport as a guest. Well, they're not. They're not. This is not a guest-host relationship. I view it more as a parasite-host relationship. I'm very well aware of what the airport has done to the city, and what it's done to the city is far more than what it's done for the city, especially with the whole recent $500,000 pilot. At the same time, I know that this particular piece of what's in front of us here this evening is also part of a larger agreement between the city and the airport, which will help to mitigate some of the effects of that cargo facility, including exactly how the trucks are routed. I'd actually heard a little bit over the phone, but have no evidence relative to a suggestion that that trucking route to in which the trucks would be routed in a way that would interfere less with the city streets, that there was some sort of issue with that, but that's hearsay, and I hesitate to even bring that up because, again, I have not seen or been presented with any evidence, and we have certainly had a very long process here, and I would expect that if there were some issue with that component, we should be hearing about it. We should be seeing that evidence, and that's not something that I've seen. That's not something that's been presented to me or to any of us. So I come back to, this is something that the councilman for the area, he and the city had negotiated. He and the city support this. The residents of that area, they want something that's better than nothing. The majority of them, from my understanding of the representations, the majority of them would prefer something over nothing, and that seems very rational to me. There is very much a land use component to all of this, and as I said before, where it's a land use and it particularly affects one ward more than the others, and also, as this is something that the city had negotiated, for those reasons, I would tend to defer to the councilman for the area who negotiated this particular improvement on behalf of his constituents, and which those constituents are in favor of. And also recognize that this is something where the city most definitely has done its due diligence. There have been some questions raised about the appraisal. Well, this appraiser has done work for the city in the past. None of this is conclusive. I'd also like to have there's always a little bit more. And I found that as a lawyer in my profession, sometimes you always want that one little additional piece, whether that's some additional research, additional evidence, or the like. But at a certain point, you have to look at what's in front of you. And based on what's in front of me after this very long process, while I absolutely respect my colleagues who may vote no on this, based on these standards, what I've said before, and what I've seen this evening for second passage, while trying my best, of course, to keep an open mind to everything here, my vote is going to remain a yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Gephardt.
Thank you. Many of the sentiments of my colleagues are shared by myself. I've been here for all of the meetings on this particular topic. You may recall that I raised in the first meeting the issue of the appraisal. Having been through some street abandonments, I had concerns about the appraised value. And so I was happy to see that we held it after the first hearing. Subsequent to that, we did receive an extensive appraisal report, which I've had the opportunity to review. It is very thorough, and I no longer have concerns about the appraisal itself. At the last meeting, I did vote no. I know we had some members of the public here in support. However, there was mention of a petition which never surfaced. So I was skeptical to support in the absence of that. I think that was an oversight in the time between then and now. I have received that petition with the support of, I wouldn't say a tremendous amount, but a number of neighbors. To the points that the councilman from Ward 2 raised, typically in matters such as these, we will, it is the council person's responsibility to be the voice of the people from their ward. And Councilman Howe certainly has, gone to great lengths to try to solicit feedback from his residents, and is here representing them in the affirmative on this project. I, along with Ms. Komar, remain skeptical, especially based on the testimony of one of the executives who was here last time, who stated, that she was anticipating a 1 to 3 or something decibel improvement in noise mitigation, which really seems like not much. But that said, the question here before us is not do we think the mitigation is enough? Do we want the cargo terminal? Do we want the airport to expand? Do we like the airport? None of those are the question. The question is, are we going to abandon these streets? And as I consider that, really it comes down to, do we get a half-built berm with gaps in between where the city streets exist, or do we get a fully built berm that is supported by the neighbors, not all of whom support it? Obviously, we heard testimony from some neighbors here tonight who are opposed. But that is Councilman Howe's job, and the future councilman from Ward 3, whoever that should be, to work out those issues between the neighbors and what's represented here on the council. So having had my questions answered satisfactorily, I will support this evening. Not enthusiastically, but I think in support and solidarity with my colleague who has done his work on this. I will go along. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So this has been moved and seconded. Councilman Howe, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to acknowledge, I did say that I was hoping Ward 3 residents would come out, and I see Mr. Hawkins and I believe his wife, Kim. Is that Kim? Hi, Kim. I want to make something very clear to the Hawkins family that's here from the neighborhood, that the airport announced they were going to build a cargo facility, and I'm going to get to what this is about, right next door to you. They own the property that is considered residential that these streets are on that we're asking for the abatements. They own that property. So it started a long debate between RIAC and the city, where we asked them to move it to the airport side, which is the industrial. With all due respect, RIAC said no. So we said, okay, then we're not gonna, there's no way that this is gonna work. You can stand on the neighbors' porches and smell the kerosene. I was really happy you mentioned that. You can smell the aviation fuel. It blows. Now add on, blows into their porches. Add on the moving vehicles on airport property, and they want to use city roads as well. Well, they wanted to use city roads. You may have heard that the mayor and myself and the city, representing the city, went to debate with them about where they can put the roads, the rotaries, like where the trucks get off. We didn't want them on city streets. And the only idea we came up with, because they were going to build that cargo facility no matter what. Doesn't matter, it's on our property, we're building it. It's kind of like that neighbor who builds that ugly shed. It's their property, they can do it. And it's the same thing. Now, let's also keep in mind that the RIAC is backed by the FAA. The RIAC is backed by the state. It's the Rhode Island Airport Corporation. So very simply put, we went and challenged some of that. They took away the $500,000 pilot money, and I hope Councilman Lattiser, I agree with everything you said. You're absolutely right. There's battles we have, but I hope you can acknowledge that whenever we put in for the increase in the pilot money, I sponsored that legislation to make RIAC pay more to address those issues. So this is not something where, understand, we're saying, oh, rats, shucks, they want to put something there. We fought it. The berm, which is what this is on, the abandonment of those roads to build that berm, is something, anything to protect the neighborhood, because RIAC has said adamantly they are building it right there. And shrug of shoulders. There's no nice way to say that. So I have no control over RIAC property, but I do have a say representing you, Kim, and your neighbors. So I said, is there anything we can do? And one of the things we requested was put a berm there. A statement was made that yes, FAA said, no, the berm's not required, it'll be fine. We stuck to our comments, we stuck to our guns. And so therefore RIAC is now paying, as you heard one of the speakers say, RIAC is now paying for the berm. If we do not abandon these streets, RIAC said, we'll still hold our word and we'll build the berm, but oh well, there'll be gaps. We just won't build where the streets are. So I just want to explain to you, Mr. Hawkins, I understand. I hear what you're saying, I've heard it. This is not in support of a cargo facility. This is not in support of RIAC. This is not giving RIAC something. This is RIAC paying for a berm, something, anything to somehow protect that neighborhood. And I understand people have the feeling, if I support this berm, this sound berm, I'm supporting that cargo facility. That's not the case. This berm, RIAC does not want to do it, because then RIAC doesn't have to put out over $1 million to build it. They don't want it. This is something we were able to get from RIAC, as well as the mayor fighting in his administration, to get them to build a rotary on airport property to keep those trucks that are delivering off our city roads that we just repaved. And we paid 10% for, we posted 10% to the state so they would pave Post Road for our citizens. So this has been a continuation of things. So I just wanted to explain that to you. I've been saying Ward 3, there were questions, Ward 3 residents. I want to thank my colleagues and you, Mr. President, for allowing me to have the minute to explain to the constituents who are here, who are affected, the reasoning for these abatements and what I was looking for and the purpose of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So before us, it's been moved for favorable action, and it's been second for second passage. The clerk will call the roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley? Yes. Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
No.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no, second passage.
Thank you. Second passage.
Thank you, Mr. President, and all my colleagues. Thank you.
So going back, if you're following us on the agenda, we are going back to page 2, which is appointments requiring confirmation. First up is Historical Cemeteries Commission Committee Report Appointments.
Committee recommends favorable action on this appointment.
Okay, Ward 2, Councilman Ricks.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley, Councilwoman Travis, Councilman Lattiser, and Councilman Gephardt, and Councilman Howe. Any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening in committee? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action. Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. Number 3 this evening is the consent calendar. First up is PCR 92-24, a resolution relative to bids. Community report, finance.
Favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Foley. Thank you. Go ahead, Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bid 2025-207, 2025-189 Alpha, 2025-170, 2025-199, 2025-194, 2025-216, 2025-196, 2025-195, 2025-169, 2025-209, 2025-180, 2024-271, 2025-189 Bravo, 2025-187, 2025-226, 2025-212, 2023-115, and 2023-152. Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any questions or comments that were not asked earlier this evening in committee? Okay. Number 2 on the consent calendar is PCR 93-24, resolution relative to abatements. Committee report, finance.
Move favorable action.
For action, Councilman Howe.
Move favorable action in the amount of $9,788.35.
Second by Councilman Foley. And, any questions or comments on PCR 93-24? Okay. Next up on the consent calendar is PCR 94-24, resolution relative to claims. Committee report, public safety.
Recommend favorable action.
For action, Councilman Foley.
Move favorable action.
Second by Councilman Ricks. Go ahead, and Councilman McElroy. Go ahead, Councilman Foley.
First claim is for Karen Grabarian, approved in the amount of $115.74. The next is Joanne Fiore, approved in the amount of $781. Jennifer McKenna, approved in the amount of $279.72. Next is Michael Paraso, approved in the amount of $214.14. Next is Robert Weldy, approved in the amount of $266.50. Next is Michael Antonelli, approved in the amount of $850. And then there's Ariana Petroselli, and that is, the motion is to deny.
I believe there's one more.
One more, yep, thank you. And the last one is Noel Shaughnessy, is to approve in the amount of $300.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the public safety consent calendar that were not asked earlier this evening in committee? Okay, hearing none. Are there any questions or comments on the consent calendar as a whole? Hearing none, the clerk will call a roll for favorable action.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt? Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy?
Yes.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi? Yes. Ms. Travis?
Yes.
9 yes, consent passes.
Thank you. Consent passes. I believe 2 items have been removed from the consent calendar. Councilman Howe.
Yes, Mr. President. Bid 2025-217 is now PCR 95-24. It was moved favorable action.
Okay, so you'll move it favorable. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Foley. Go ahead, Councilman Howe.
Mr. President, the bid 2025-217 repair and replace frame on engine 3 was it can move PCR 95-24 and voted favorable out of the committee.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this? Councilman Lattiser.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the committee, I had pointed out an error in the math on this item. I had requested an amendment to reflect the actual numbers, and that was denied by the Finance Committee. Makes no sense to me to continue approving bids where the numbers don't add up. To just arbitrarily say, it's okay, the numbers don't add up, it's only $104,
But yes.
move on. That is not financially responsible to me. I don't believe anyone in this room would go anywheres and voluntarily pay $104 more for something than they should. And I don't see why we're treating these bids any different. The numbers are wrong. They need to be corrected. This isn't the first time, this isn't the second time, this isn't the third time that these errors in bids are just approved and let go. At some point, this needs to be corrected. I am going to make a motion to correct this number to what should be the number that the taxpayers will be responsible for, which is $377,376. That is what the number should be.
Second to the councilman's motion, second by Councilman Ricks. Can I just ask for that number again, Councilman?
$377,376.
And currently, it states, what's the amount currently?
The current bid is $377,480.
Okay. Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. That was determined for two reasons. One, first of all, for clarification, no one, not one person said on the committee, it's only $104, whatever. No one said that. That was not the thought. The discussion, the discussion that went on was there was a 20% where we are authorizing to spend up to. So the vehicle is going to be shipped to Wisconsin, have a new frame put on, and there are going to be other stuff done. If it doesn't reach that amount, and I can't believe I'm explaining this, if it doesn't reach that amount, it won't be that amount. They won't write the check for that amount. They are not writing for the check for over just $104. They are authorizing up to spend to that amount. If it comes back over, then they'll present it to us and we'll have to authorize to spend again. So the logistics of those numbers basically is not irrelevant, but not worth an amendment for the simple fact it is the authorization to spend to repair the equipment. The bigger picture is putting a new frame on a perfectly good fire truck. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Councilman Latta, sir.
So if we want to take the time to listen to the tape, the reference to the $104 was absolutely made, and it was denied to change it. And I hear what you're saying on the spending authority. This isn't about the spending authority. This is about accountability. This is about responsibility. This is about no one checking numbers. You add 20% onto something. This is Math 101 for a third grade math student, and the numbers are coming up wrong. To just subjectively or arbitrarily say, let it go, or not say it, but still let it go, is wrong. This has happened many times over the past year or so, or maybe more. It has got to stop. There has to be accountability on the department heads that are presenting us with these requests. If you're telling us that 2 and 2 is 4, then it should be 4, not 6 or 5. And the monetary amount, 104, well, some folks might think that 104 is, not such a big number. Well, it is a big number. Actually, for you to take 104 out of your pocket, you'd have to earn about 130. So this is about accountability. This is about coming to us with the numbers that add up. This is about someone double checking information and numbers that are being provided to us so that we are voting on accurate stuff. And that is not the case here. And that has not been the case numerous times in the past. And it's time that we make sure that whatever it is you submit to us, if it doesn't add correctly, that we rectify it and vote on the appropriate number. This is something that needs to change going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The administration is here. The chief, I'm sorry, I missed this earlier in finance. Do you have any dispute of the 104, the calculation? Is there any reason not to amend this? Is there any concern? Any? I don't think it's on,
so,
Chief.
no. Hold on one sec, Chief.
Thank you. Chief Peter McMichael, I have no issue with that. As Councilman Howe pointed out, it's merely the spending authority up to that amount. I can't see how $100 is going to make a difference either way. Again, but we are not that was not our position paper. As you know, repairs are all handled through Public Works. So that would be a Public Works position paper. All of that information that you received was not from the fire department.
Thanks, Chief. So it looks like no one's disputing this. Councilman has his point. Understand what Councilman Howe is talking about with the spending authority. I think my position is let's just make it clean, add the 104 in on it. Everybody checks their stuff going forward. But I do want to thank the Finance Committee that put the work in, talked about this beforehand, and explained the actual process with the spending authority. But Councilman Lattiser, I will support your amendment just to get the clean slate and move this forward. Any other questions or comments from members of the council? Councilman Howe.
And for clarification, I have no problem supporting it. I just don't appreciate we're kind of nonchalantly just saying, it's only 104. That statement was not made. It was presented in a statement of original, but it was not made by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Howe. So amendment has been moved and second. So the clerk will call a roll for favorable action on the amendment, which is to add the $104.
Mr. McAllister?
Yes.
Mr. Foley?
Yes.
Mr. Gephardt?
Yes.
Mr. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Lattiser?
Yes.
Mr. McElroy? Yes. Mr. Ricks?
Yes.
Mr. Sinapi?
Yes.
Ms. Travis? Yes. 9 yes to amend.
Thank you. Councilman Lattiser would like to move that favorable as amended.
Mr. President, all right, we'll move favorable and we'll still have discussion, right?
Yep.
Okay, move favorable as amended.
Second by, anyone want to second that?
Councilman Foley.
Oh, Councilman Foley and Councilman Howe. Go ahead, Councilman Lattiser.
I will still be voting no on this item. I do not agree that it makes any sense to me to spend almost 50% or possibly 50% on a vehicle that all we're going to be getting is a new frame on a vehicle that, because we get a new frame, is going to last another 10 or 15 years or more. I think that this is not a good investment in comparison to purchasing a brand new everything for obviously more money. But to drop still being in a currently 13-year status with 123,000 miles on it, to me, a business decision I would not be approving, and I will not be voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councilman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President. The discussion happened in the committee, and I just want to give you a scenario. Many people question why fire trucks, rescues, or I should say pumpers even, are sent to houses the same time or before rescues are sent. And one of the reasons is because if all the rescues are occupied, at least the pumper can go to the house and address the medical situation. But I just don't feel comfortable telling someone that if all the rescues are occupied and we're down a pumper and we can't send that it was a business decision. So I'm going to support this because now pumpers are going for $800,000 to $1 million a piece. It's a perfectly good vehicle done by the inspection, and I think that this is a wise and smart move to go ahead, and good looks by the chief, because it could be so easy to sit there and say, hey, as the accusations flew earlier, we got all this opera money, let's just spend it. They thought of a good way to keep a vehicle in use, and I know that a lot of discussions in this chamber happened as PMCS of your vehicles and taking care in the longevity of our city vehicles, and it seems that's what's being attempted here. So I respectfully request favorable action. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been moved and second. The clerk will call roll for favorable action as amended. Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes as amended. Councilman Howe, I believe there's a second item that has been removed from the consent calendar.
Yes, Mr. President. Formal bid 2025, I'm sorry, I put on my glasses. 218, purchase of various police vehicles is now PCR 9624, and the committee voted favorable action.
Okay, and Councilman Lattiser, did you ask for a PCR on this?
I did.
Councilman Lattiser.
So I will not be voting in support of this either, not because I disagree with the purchasing of 3 vehicles. I disagree with the vehicles being, I think, significantly more than what is necessary to accommodate the police department's needs, such as a $46,000 Grand Cherokee when they could be using a lesser vehicle that's 6,000 or even more savings to the taxpayers and still get the 3 vehicles that they need. So for that reason, because of, I think, the issue of the types of vehicles and the cost of those vehicles, I think it's unnecessary. I think it could have been done in a more reasonable manner. So I will be voting no.
Thank you. And I jumped the gun going to Councilman Lattiser. We need a motion. You said favorable action. by
Move favorable
Councilman
action on
Allen,
PCR 96.
And second by Councilman Foley.
24.
Sorry about that.
Did I get ahead of myself?
Yeah, no, I did. I called on you before I got the motion.
Thank you for the
so.
condolence. Thank you.
Councilman Gephardt.
I'll when I first looked at this one, that the different vehicles jumped out at me, but it was described that these vehicles are for purposes that are covert in nature, and so I would say there's business purpose for why we have the variance in vehicles, and so I will support this one. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, the clerk will call the roll for favorable action. Yes.
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 No.
Yes.
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 Thank you. Motion passes. Next up, if you're following us on the agenda, unfinished business. We've already done PCO 8-24. So now we're moving to new business. There is none. Now we move to unanimous consent. Ward 1, anything to docket under unanimous consent. Ward 2.
Pass.
Ward 3. Pass. Ward 4.
Pass.
Ward 5. Pass. Ward 6.
Pass.
Ward 7 passes. Ward 8. Ward 9. Councilwoman Travis.
If there be no further business of this honorable body, I move to a docket session.
All those in favor to move into docket session, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are now in the docket session. I have 2 items to docket. First up is neighborhood ARPA projects, finance. And second is an ominous withdrawal resolution. Intergovernmental. Ward 1, anything to docket this evening? Ward 2.
Pass.
Ward 3.
Pass.
Ward 4.
Pass.
Ward 5.
Pass.
Ward 6.
Pass.
Ward 8.
1, a resolution regarding request for an investigation to protect the health and safety and welfare for residents of and around Fashion Drive.
Intergovernmental. Ward 9.
Pass.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.